Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. You're in a new location, that's obvious, and we're both in the middle of kind of a heat wave here in the Bay Area. And I'm going to get sweatier than you because you have air conditioning. You've already told me, and I
Yeah.
do not up here in my office. So we'll see. I may just be a puddle by the time we're done. But okay,
All
so
right.
we're ready. We're ready to go. And I just before we start, I just want to say, I know that we always have the disclaimer that, Eddie can't answer questions, blah, 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 during the broadcast and all that stuff, and don't leave stuff on Facebook. But I do on occasion go and visit the Facebook thing just to see if people had a good time or whatever. And man, people are great.
Hmm.
The people who watch us regularly, they're so fantastic. It just does my heart good to know that there's like a community of these people who watch regularly, and it's fun. It's great fun. So I wish I had a schedule that allowed me to participate in that part of this process, but as of now, not too easy. But that who knows? Maybe one of these days.
Oh.
So anyway, get us
Okay.
started, Ann.
Okay. This is David from Takoma Park, Maryland. Most of the movies which were shown at North City, DC 2022 were celebrating their 75th anniversaries. Do you anticipate doing that again? How many more years would it be feasible to do that? Are there other themes you have tried before that you'd like to do again? Do you have ideas for other themes that you haven't tried before that you would like to try? Is it entirely up to you, or are there others who help pick the festival's theme? Does the festival always have a theme?
Hey, I think David covered it all. I think he covered it all there. I'm not even going to try to count up how many questions that was, but that was a number of them. Um, it was very tempting to just continue the 75th anniversary thing because it's obvious that when we did it, it was what 1948, and then the next year it would have been 1949, and then 1950 and 1951. But to me, that was just too simple, too simplistic. It just isn't an interesting way to approach it. Um, I I pretty much decide the theme unless I'm totally stuck, and then I like put out. I just say to people in the core group that I work with, anybody have any good ideas for a theme? And obviously I've gotten some good unsolicited ideas from people about themes for a festival. And then there's some that I've just had to stall on because it takes a while to figure out if you have enough. If I did a thing, I'm not going to say what it is because then somebody else will steal the idea if I haven't gotten around to it. So I'm not going to say some of these themes. Um, but that's pretty much how it works. And it's interesting that David asked, does the festival always have a theme? Um, it was interesting because when we started out, of course, the theme was film noir.
Yeah.
It's like what else do you need, right? But I learned very quickly in trying to promote the festival through the media in San Francisco, I had to come up with another theme to differentiate it and to attract. There used to be newspapers, there used to be editors at newspapers, entertainment editors, and things like that. And they would say, didn't we do this last year? And then you could say, well, no, this year the theme is whatever. So it's not just, oh, yeah, it's film noir again. It's like, no, it's actually films about comparing movies set in New York and Los Angeles, or it's all about movies made in San Francisco, or it's all about women. All the protagonists of the film are women. So there was always a subset to just film noir. And that was very important. I don't honestly know how important it is anymore, but it's fun to do it. It gives us ideas for how to promote it and what we want to do with the poster and everything. So, what was your favorite of the? Do you have one of the themes we've done?
I mean, for me, it was probably the international one. that we
Yeah.
did. Well, we've done it a couple times, but that was definitely one of them. And I actually did like the one from 1948. I think mainly because it was amazing to see Edward G. Robinson give great, three great performances in three movies where the characters were completely different. Like it wound up
Yes.
showing like the range that he had as an actor. And I really enjoyed that very much.
It was also, that was a lot of fun because it really, I think more than any festival we've done, it showed how it really was a movement in Hollywood because virtually all the films were from Hollywood. And it was just amazing to see, like, oh, and tonight here's MGM. Now Universal is doing this, and Fox is doing this. And like you say, it was like the emergence of Burt Lancaster because he was in a lot of movies in that festival, and not just acting in them, but already producing them. Just like 2 years after he arrived in Hollywood, he was a producer. So all that's pretty interesting. I sort of do know what the theme is for next year, but I'm not saying it yet.
Yeah. You guys all have to keep up with the show and our social media.
Indeed. And then it's interesting because I think I said something like this last time we were here because somebody asked a question about the festivals, and the longer festivals really require a theme, whereas the 3-day festivals do not.
Yeah.
And if a festival is relatively new, like if we add a new, like I'm going into Portland, right? This month, back to Portland, but we haven't been there in a while. And I felt no obligation to maintain this year's theme of Darkness Has No Borders. I mean, we're showing one, maybe two foreign language films, but that's not the overriding theme. It's just like, here's stuff that we haven't shown since the last time we were in Portland, and new films that we restored or preserved, like The Man Who Cheated Himself, which was a restoration that was completed after we had done our last show in Portland, which was I think 2014 or 15 or something. So it's different for the short festivals. Those become more like greatest hits programs. The longer 7 to 10 day festivals have the theme.
Sorry, let me just deal with my light situation.
Okay.
Read question 2.
Okay, I'm going to read question 2 to the cable car. This is from Suzanne. She says, when I think of movies of the film noir era that speak to our current sociopolitical landscape, I think of that was my mistake. I think of Sweet Smell of Success, Corruption and the Pursuit of Wealth and Power, Panic in the Streets, the recent pandemic, and Pickup on South Street takes place during the Red Scare and McCarthyism, which has contemporary parallels. Of neo-noirs, Chinatown is brilliant. R.I.P. Robert Towne, just passed away. Chinatown is brilliant on civic corruption at the highest level. Wow. Suzanne, that is not civic corruption at the highest level. We're going much higher than that now. And the mismanagement of natural resources. Can you name other noirs that address criminality that extends beyond the interpersonal? That means spouses killing each other.
Right.
I get the sense that the classic era noirs wanted to or were required to limit crimes to a few criminal deviants or to outwardly normal people who harbor unexpressed criminal leanings. But I'm interested in any film noir that speaks to our times, whatever the theme. Well, that's interesting, Suzanne. If you haven't done this already, I am going to recommend that you get a copy of Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir, which speaks to a lot of this. But it's interesting because what was it, I lost track now. Last year was 21. So the year before we did the Noir City Festival, the theme was They Tried to Warn Us.
Yeah, I think that was 19. Right?
Oh, 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because 20 was the 75th
40.
anniversary. Yeah. Noir City 19 was They Tried to Warn Us. That was like a semi-abbreviated year because of COVID. And all of the films were chosen because they had this exact parallel that Suzanne is talking about. So yeah, there were a lot of those films, and you hit on a very important notion here, Suzanne, which is there were a lot of filmmakers who were writing quote unquote crime films in which the crime and corruption was ingrained in the system or perceived to be a societal thing, and there were actual societal causes of a lot of the crime. And then there were outlaw movies where the idea was people are just born crazy or they're natural born killers, so to speak. And that became a political football in the business. And with the rise of the HUAC committee, a lot of studio bosses were told, do not blame capitalism and big business for causing criminal behavior. And clearly before that happened, there were films like I Walk Alone, Force of Evil. You could, anyway, there are a lot of movies that just took that tack. Like, when Polanski did Force of Evil, it's based on a novel in which there's a famous line, crime is the grease that makes things run. And they just took that and said, this applies to both sides of the law. Anyway, and there's a lot of social issues. We showed a movie called, we showed on our opening night, right, was Crossfire, which is a crime movie, right? And it's a anti-Semitism is the subject. But then we showed it with this movie, Open Secret. You saw Open Secret, right? About where John Ireland goes to the small town and there's a whole like neo-Nazi thing in this small town targeting the Jews and burning out their businesses and everything. So, and I mean, that was a B film. And then I recently on Noir Alley showed a film called Violence, which isn't a very good movie, but it was so interesting because it showed using hate speech and all of this stuff as a political ploy to garner followers for nothing more than ruthless political ambition. So I thought that was timely. So, and that's why I will show a less than excellent movie on Noir Alley, because it's like, can you believe how timely this is? It's kind of remarkable. So anyway, I mean, those are some examples, but seriously, Suzanne, if you haven't read Dark City, if you don't want to buy it, go to your library and get it out a copy, because the first 60 or 70 pages of the book are specifically about what you're addressing here. Okay.
Okay. And this is from JW. What is the status of the next publication of Dark City Dames?
Manuscript is done. Manuscript has been submitted. The book is being laid out right now. I've seen the cover. The cover is fantastic. And it will be available April of 2025. And I could not be happier about the way it turned out. And it's interesting that I was just going to make a comment kind of pertaining to the last two questions in terms of the film festival. It's interesting that I think there's only one theme that we've done at the festival that would be questionable today. It's just funny, because so much has changed. When you do film festivals for 25 years, it's kind of mind-boggling. And then you realize, wow, we're still doing the same thing, but boy, the culture has changed in this time, right? The festival we did, which I called Who's Crazy Now, which was all protagonists with mental illness.
Yeah.
I think we'd get pushback on that now.
Yeah, probably.
Even though I don't know how you can, who wants to defend Bluebeard and, but just, we use the term crazy in the tagline. and I'm sure there would be people now saying it's wrong to call these people crazy. They're just tuned differently or something, you know. But rest assured, they were all crazy when these movies were made. The people were considered pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Who wants to step up and defend Peeping Tom? You know, the guy in the movie, right? I mean, that's crazy. That guy's crazy.
Ted and I just watched the Criterion of that. It was really interesting to see it again. And actually, I do find his character sympathetic in some ways. Like you can kind of just see how broken he is. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't excuse what he does and stuff. And I thought what happened to him at the end was a good thing for for society, but they don't make him just like a nothing character. Like there's a reason why he is the way he is and stuff. And he's, know, and it is tragic.
It's not a slasher film or anything like that. I mean, it's a great movie. Almost cost Powell his career, but anyway, so the new Dark City Dames will have profiles of, in addition to the 6 women that I knew and wrote about extensively, the new edition will have 10 chapters on 10 other actresses, who obviously those chapters are abbreviated and just like bonus to me, because I never, well, that's not true. I did meet several of the women that I profile, like Jan Sterling and of course Marsha Hunt and Rhonda Fleming. I did know them, but I talk about Joan Bennett and your fave Claire Trevor, and so it's great, and Running Press just does such a glorious job putting the book together that it's very, very exciting when you start to see the manuscript pages come back laid out with the photographs and everything. So it's great. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Me too.
Okay, so here up, our friend Michael in Post Falls, Idaho, he weighs in and says, Eddie mentioned that he had submitted a write-in vote for Tab Hunter's memoir on the Hollywood Reporter's Top 100 movie book list, which is kind of funny because I co-wrote that book and I wrote it in, but I did not vote for Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir in that ballot, and that did actually end up being named one of the 100. Anyway, it reminded me I had sent in a question back in June of 2022 after I had finished reading the book. Since it was never answered on the show, sorry, Michael, I'm resubmitting it. Anyway, he wants to know if his theory is correct that Eddie became involved. I apologize for my bad eyes. Light from the window is killing me. Eddie became involved with Tab through Evelyn Keyes. Well, that is true. My question, I just finished. This is kind of
from October, by the way.
Okay. Since Tab was never in a noir film, how did Eddie get involved in this project? I see. That was the original question. Okay. Yeah. Also, having collaborated with notables myself in writing their book, I'm curious to know what that's about. What was the process like for Eddie? Okay, that is true. It was because of my friendship with Evelyn, writing Dark City Dames, that she suggested me to Tab. And I think that's what happened, or else Tab's partner, Alan Glasser, read Dark City Dames and thought my profiling of Evelyn was so spot on that he suggested me to Tab, one or the other. But whichever it was, Evelyn vouched for me. And then that's how I met Tab and discussed doing the book, which really did come out of left field and was not on my radar at all. And it took a while. It took a couple of years to do it. And fortunately, Tab had tried to get a book done a couple of times before, working with other writers. It did not go well. But he had taken a crack at a manuscript himself, which had a lot of good stuff in it, but was not ready for publication, and it wasn't structured very well. And of course, Tab did not really come out fully in his manuscript. He was very guarded. So essentially, that was my job, uh, was to make sure he was gay,
Yeah.
like fully gay, and that's why they were paying big money for the memoir, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a huge advantage to have him already commit some things, stories to paper, because then I didn't have to go through all of learning all of that. It was like I could
Yeah.
just read it and then react to him and say, but what about this? But what about that? And then another part of it was just earning his confidence and just talking to him. I must have talked to Tab. Oh my God. I have it all recorded. I have every single session we had recorded. And I'd go down to his house in Montecito and he'd come up to the city. Uh, and we just hung out for 2 years, and I would do it as we went along. I'd write chapters as we went along, and then we'd review those while I'm learning all kinds of new stuff. And that's basically how it all ended up being put together. And I'm proud of it. I think it's a very good autobiography, and I was very grateful that Tab was so generous in sharing the credit for the book with me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of theories about why that was, but they're not important to anybody, that anybody know them. But it was gratifying, and I'm that's it. I'm proud of that book.
I can
Okay.
hear the birds.
I know I got birds over here, and I'm so glad because there's some guys doing some work in the next house over, and we're not hearing them. So if you can hear the birds, that's a good thing. Okay.
And this is Alan from San Elsom. How do you pronounce that?
San Anselmo, California. Yeah.
What character actor always makes the scene movie more interesting immediately when he appears on the screen? Simon Oakland does it for me. You want to kill each other? Go ahead and kill each other, but not on my watch.
Simon Oakland.
Yeah,
and
I mean, he
mother killed the girl.
He just always makes me think of Vincenzo and Night Stalker. That's just who he always is to me. Like every time I see him, and like Vincenzo.
Well, to me, it's always that scene at the end of Psycho, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's where he says, and and then I always love it when the guy goes, "He's a transvestite," and Simon goes, "Not exactly." And of course, Simon Oakland played Ed Montgomery in "I Want to Live" opposite Susan Hayward, who was a friend of our family. Ed Montgomery, the reporter who wrote all the stories about Barbara Graham that were turned into the movie. He worked at the San Francisco Examiner, was a colleague of my dad's, and he'd come over the house for dinner, fairly regularly. I mean, not like regularly, but I knew him. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, and Alan, I'm not going to be a nitpicker, but I think that line you're quoting of Simon Oakland's, which is from West Side Story, is you want to kill each other? Go ahead and kill each other, but not on my beat. I think he says not on my beat because he's a cop, right? And so on my watch is more military. On my beat is cop talk. So I think that, anyway, the point is, what actor do we love seeing appear? Makes everything better when he shows up on screen. And do you have a personal favorite in this regard? It has to be something like more obscure than like Elijah Cook Jr.
or something like that. I mean, this isn't film noir, but William Demarest for Preston Sturges films. Like every time he shows up, he's just so amazing. Like
absolutely,
yeah. I mean,
he is in at least one good noir. Night Has a Thousand Eyes.
Night Has a Thousand Eyes. Yeah.
He's really good in that. I'm gonna pick a really obscure one because it's funny because we're putting together. I shouldn't be spoiling this, but we're putting together. Okay, go ahead.
Nat Pendleton.
Nat Pendleton. Yeah. He's pretty great. Well, it was actually more in the 30s. There were more of these people. I think there were more of the stock character guys who would pop up in these movies, and you just, oh my God, there he is again. Um, we're preparing an article for the Noir City magazine that tentatively is called One Scene Wonders. And it's just about this, like actors or actresses. I have never gotten used to just actors.
Yeah.
I still say actresses, even though everybody says you have to abandon that now. They're all actors,
I say actresses.
I mean, it just sometimes it offers more clarity, So, just these people who are in the movie literally for one scene, and they're unforgettable for that one scene. So I'm picking a guy named Frank Jenks, who plays the greatest drunks in films, but he's also, if you remember Woman on the Run, he is the like the lieutenant or whatever to Robert Keith, who's the lead cop. Frank Jenks is his colleague, subordinate, whatever. There's a dozen guys in this town all going around wearing a snap brim felt and an overcoat, and he's great in High Wall, where he's just a plot device that gets Robert Taylor and Audrey Totter out of this bar, but they have to pretend that he's their friend, and they take him out, and he is 10 sheets to the wind, and he just has this one scene between them in a taxi cab, steals the whole movie. He's outrageously funny in this movie. Of course, this is something else, that funny drunks in movies are not something you see too often anymore, right? That's a character that's been put away, right? Nothing humorous about that anymore. So anyway, Frank Jenks, there's one. I mean, there's so many of these. Esther Howard, on the female side. As soon as Esther Howard shows up, she steals the movie. At whatever the movie is, she steals the movie, right? So Detour, she's in Detour as the woman, working in the restaurant, and of course she's as Lawrence Tierney himself said, she's the best thing in Born to Kill. She makes the movie.
Yeah, anyway. She's amazing in that. Yeah, and I was gonna say too, like for One Scene Wonders, I think it's Somewhere in the Night, when he goes to the house and it's the older woman,
Joyce Hutchinson.
God,
I think her name is Joyce Hutchinson. Yeah,
that is the best scene in the film. That just
by far
that film for me.
Yeah. She will be in this article. Okay, definitely.
Good.
Definitely good choice. Okay. Derek from Indian Wells, California. We're jumping all over the map here. I love it. Well, why did the classic noir period end when it did? And you're actually don't fuss. That lighting is actually very good. Okay, it's actually good. It's very cinematic lighting.
Yeah, it is.
So don't I wouldn't fuss over it.
Okay, I'm not gonna worry about it.
Anyway, why did the classic noir period end when it did? And do you want to tackle this? Because I think we've kind of discussed this in the past. But
I don't know. It seems like people jump around on that. I mean, different people have different ideas. Like they'll say very specifically, like this was the last film, and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I mean, the reason it faded out, and it wasn't an abrupt end. It was a gradual fade out of film noir, was because of television.
Yeah,
I mean that was it, because movies had to suddenly look bigger and more colorful and have widescreen and everything to attract people away from the television set, and noir sized stories were more readily translatable to television, but the look of noir was not translatable to television because the technology was so, I don't want to say primitive. There's nothing primitive about broadcast technology, but it was in its infancy, and so it was unable to recreate the stark shadows and things did not translate to early television as they did in a movie theater. So when studios realized they could sell their films to television, they specifically said stop photographing them that way
Yeah.
because they're not going to look good on TV. So that, and the one I always point to is just look at the difference between Out of the Past and Nightfall, movies made
Yeah.
10 years apart by the same director. They're very similar movies in a lot of ways, but Nightfall looks entirely different, and that's because it was going to eventually be sold to television, and they said no deep dark shadows, no massive areas of black on the screen, none of that. So all those close-ups of Mitchum and Jane Greer in in the San Francisco apartment, those don't look good on old TVs. But the close-ups of Aldo Ray and Anne Bancroft, no problem
Yeah.
seeing those on TV because they're low contrast. In fact, when I first got into looking for movies for restoration possibilities, that's when I learned about TV prints. They would say this is a TV print, a 16 millimeter TV print, and that meant that it had been retimed so that it wasn't as contrasty. It had to
Yeah.
be of a lower contrast to show up acceptably on television. So
Yeah. And I think too, some of that sort of noir kind of went to television and television shows like Johnny Stacchino and that kind of
yeah,
thing, where those
yeah.
stories kind of with detectives or whatever kind of went to television, rather than being produced as films.
Yes, I totally agree. And you saw a lot of the same writers, directors, actors.
Yeah.
They all gravitated to TV because TV had such short shooting schedules. A lot of the real pros from the studio system ended up working in television because they knew how to not waste time and money
Yeah.
and film, because they were shot on film back then. So anyway, that's you can just blame TV. But then obviously, I have them around. Now people are writing books about TV noir because that's where it gravitated. So endless cycle. And
And it's
now, of
still there.
course,
Yeah.
exactly. And now we're talking about all this stuff from TV. By the way, what a segue! I am so thrilled to have Babylon Berlin back in the
Yeah.
States because they made a fourth season of that show in Germany that was released, I think, 2 years ago, but it's only now showing in the States. It just started a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to make a pitch for people who maybe are new to the show, who haven't heard me rave about Babylon Berlin before. That it's in my estimation one of the greatest TV series of all time. It has everything in it. I mean, it's totally noir. It's a police procedural. It's a mystery thriller. It's a musical, and it's not a musical. It has strong musical elements in it, and a fabulous nightclub that is the center of a lot of the action. Anyway, it's absolutely spectacular, and it's now showing on my favorite network, MHZ Choice, which is now, I understand, a subset of Amazon Prime. So if
Oh,
you
okay.
have Amazon Prime, you can actually access MHZ Choice and you can watch Babylon Berlin that way. And it has all of it. It has all four seasons, not just the new one. So I would highly recommend, if you are not familiar with the show, going back to the beginning and watching the first 16 episodes are all one storyline, and then the next eight or something is another storyline, which is of interest to movie fans because it's set in a Babelsberg film studio in 1929, and they do a beautiful job mimicking German expressionist cinema and avant-garde. It has the greatest title sequence ever for a television show because they're emulating German avant-garde movies of that period, and it's just fabulous.
Did you see the remaking Nosferatu again?
Dave Eggers is doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right? That is the
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
the guy
really
who did
weird.
the Lighthouse and the
Yeah,
Norseman and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I don't
w-
know. It just seems like an odd choice because it's like, Murnau's done it in Herzog. I don't know if I would have had the cojones then to do it
well,
myself. I mean, good for him, but I don't know
I
if
mean, if anybody has the visual sensibility
yeah.
to do it, I guess it's him. Then again, it's like, will he be imitating Murnau's style? I don't know. He kind of has that style anyway. I mean,
uh,
I haven't seen a lot of his movies. I've saw The Lighthouse. Did
yeah.
you see The Lighthouse?
I've not seen any of his films. God, this is going to sound terrible, but they just all look really long and boring. I mean, I don't know. Like there was a time in my life when that I think he would have like I was seeing like clips of his phones being, oh yeah, man, I gotta see this. But I'm just like at the stage in my life where it's really weird. Like things that I don't know. I've
No,
gone through my art period and I'm not
you need not
really, yeah,
apologize. I mean,
yeah,
I make these same judgments, and then I
yeah.
find out later I'm usually wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Uh,
still haven't watched The Witch. Like everyone keeps telling me how great The Witch is,
no, I
and
haven't seen it either.
but
I
it's
saw
like,
The Lighthouse,
oh,
and it was really creepy and unpleasant, and but but compellingly watchable.
okay. I mean,
You
I've thought
know,
about watching that one because that one did look like I
anything
don't know.
set in a lighthouse to me
Yeah, I
is
know.
cool. It's like,
Yeah,
I got to do that.
it's a
Did you
pretty
ever
good
see?
setting.
And did you ever see the play that I did in San Francisco, the Lighthouse play? Did
No,
you ever see that?
no, no, no. I didn't know.
Did you ever come to the theater when we did the Grand Guignol stuff? The
Yeah, yeah, because I did an interview with you about it. It was
oh
really
yeah
good. It was
yeah
the
yeah
one where
yeah
one of them had a very Dan Duryea character in it.
yes, an
Yeah,
obvious explanation. Yes, that
yeah.
was
I really like
yes,
that.
my buddy Flynn DeMarco. I
He did a
said
good job.
he knew exactly what he was doing, and he started doing it. I said, "Oh, that's kind of a Dan Duryea you got going on there. Just keep that up."
Uh,
That was great. But we did a lighthouse one before that called Orgy in the Lighthouse.
yeah,
It was based on a famous Grand Guignol play
yeah.
that that it doesn't climax in an orgy in the lighthouse, but there is an orgy in the lighthouse, and then it has a very, very disgustingly macabre twist at the end where we actually lit someone on fire on stage and
Ooh,
burned them
sorry.
to a crisp,
Wow.
which is pretty good stagecraft if
I
you
was
can
gonna
pull it
say.
off,
Oh, and speaking of lighthouse stuff, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there's a very famous radio play, Three Skeleton Key, and it's done a couple times. Vincent Price did do one of them. For people who don't know, it's about this guy in a lighthouse, and these rats are taking over the lighthouse. It is so friggin' great and really
Well,
gross.
I mean, what's better than a lighthouse for I don't know my psychological terms now, but for being completely abandoned and claustrophobic, it's like it's the greatest setting. And my buddy Guy Madden is a lighthouse fanatic as well, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
made it. I think Band Upon the Brain was his lighthouse movie, and he came and saw Orgy in the Lighthouse, and he was like all excited, like, "Oh my God, we!" I think it kind of helped inspire him to do his lighthouse movie. So anyway, um, so there's that. Okay, is it me now or you? We're reading
Seven
because
is
we're
me. So
okay.
this is Daryl in Ann Arbor.
All
My
right.
favorite film by the Cohen Brothers is Miller's Crossing, a movie filled with wonderful dialogue and fabulous performances. I know it had strong influences from Dashiell Hammett, and it is an incredibly stylish film. I'd enjoy hearing any comments that you have. I think
Okay.
they should have given a screenplay credit to The Glass Key. That actually seriously bothered me about that movie. It was too much like The Glass Key
It
for them
it is
not to give a credit to the book. Sorry, my 2 cents.
interesting, but I'm sure they figured out early on that mucking around in the estate
Yeah, yeah,
uh, causes issues because I
yeah.
believe at that point, I don't know where it all stands now, but at that point, I believe the Hellman estate, the Lillian Hellman estate, still had control of of those books, or and a number of the short stories. I don't know. Maybe Julie Hammett's granddaughter is watching this show, and she can weigh in on what the actual deal was with that. But it is clearly modeled after the Glass Key.
Yeah.
Much as another film, not a Coen Brothers film, but the movie Last Man Standing that Walter Hill did with Bruce Willis. That was Red Harvest. That was clearly a riff on Red Harvest.
Yeah.
But the rights to Red Harvest have been tied up in all sorts of complications forever. Yeah. I mean, Bernardo Bertolucci Paramount was going to make it in 1942 and never did. And then Bernardo Bertolucci was going to make it, and these Italian producers held the rights and never relinquished them, and the movie has never been made. But Miller's Crossing is great. You know, it's their hard-boiled crime fiction movie, whereas The Man Who Wasn't There is much more their. I mean, Miller's Crossing is their James M. Cain, and The Big Lebowski is their Raymond Chandler movie.
Yeah,
as goofy as it is, and Hammett. Miller's Crossing is their Hammett movie, and The Man Who Wasn't There is their James M. Cain movie. So these guys know their Pulp Fiction very, very well.
And with Man Who Wasn't There, I literally knew what the ending was going to be just because it was so James M. Cain. Like literally, it's like I knew exactly where the ending was going to go.
I liked it when it came out, but I watched it again about 6 months ago, and I really, really liked it. Yeah. I just thought it was just beautifully made, and Billy Bob Thornton is fantastic in that film.
And my dad loved the barbershop scenes. He loved it so much, the stuff in the barbershop.
Yeah, it's all good, and James Gandolfini and early Scarlett Johansson. Boy, she has just a small role, but anyway, sorry, we were supposed to be talking about Miller's Crossing.
Yeah,
but yeah, great cast. Albert Finney is fantastic, and John Turturro and John Polito, and they're it's all good. I haven't seen it in maybe 10 years. I need to go back and revisit it again. So
yeah, and I think too with that, I mean, two things. One is I tell my boys 2 in the head, which I actually really love. And then also that sequence with Danny Boy playing on the record player and those guys coming out after Albert Finney and him getting his Tommy gun. And you just see, oh yeah, this guy, he's you know what? He didn't become the boss for nothing.
That's right.
Went up the ranks, and that sequence alone, like, I mean, it's a great movie anyway, but just that sequence is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to know that is Daryl's favorite Coen Brothers movie. No. They have built quite a filmography over the years. And I admire them so much because, for some reason people have debates about their, some people think they're a little too snarky in their approach to stories. There's a lot of snark in these movies that we're talking about, but when you build up this kind of a filmography, you have to just be awed and respect it. I mean, they make their movies their way. They are uncompromising about what they want to do. They're very, very eclectic, and they just keep making movies, and they don't seem to be at the mercy of anybody or any corporate entity that, they'll just do whatever the hell they want.
Plus, not all their movies are snarky. Like Blood Simple very much isn't. Blood Simple's great. I mean, I can't believe that was somebody's first film. And then Llewellyn Davis, the story about the musician.
Llewellyn Davis,
is not snarky at all. That is like a very, really amazing sort of. I saw that with my mom and dad, actually, down in Texas when they used to have an art theater there.
And what do we like most about that movie?
The cat.
Of course. Exactly.
It's a great cat role. It's one of the great cats of cinema.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think it's me now.
8.
I'm going to read.
Down.
This is a question from Brett in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Okay. Brett says, I really enjoy the Noir or Not web series. I didn't know that's what it was. That appears on the Noir Alley Facebook page and YouTube. It helps ground me to what films are definitely noir. Brett, don't take my word for it. Which ones are not, and how others may straddle some kind of middle ground. Nevertheless, I haven't seen a new Noir or Not video on social media since July 2023. Any plans to bring it back? That was over a year ago.
Yeah, and this is an October 2024 question.
Okay.
So I think
no, it can't be. It can't be an October 2024 question because we haven't gotten
2023. Jesus.
Okay. Okay.
October 2023.
Okay, so here's the deal. That Noir or Not is I wish I had copyrighted that expression or something, because that started in back when the Noir City magazine was not even a magazine, when it was still a newsletter from the Film Noir Foundation, and we would do this little thing called Noir or Not, and ask, this is like borderline, why does this qualify as noir or why doesn't it qualify as noir? And now, of course, it's a regular department in the magazine. And then when I started doing this stuff for TCM in 2017, they said, we need to create stuff to promote the show on social media. Do you have any ideas? And I said, well, why don't we do a Noir or Not thing? And it's so funny because the way those were made, I didn't even see the films under discussion until the day that we recorded it, right? And then they would just come in and hand me a sheet that said, here are 12 movies. Which ones do you want to talk about? And sometimes I just say, I don't even want this movie to be in the conversation. It's so not noir. Or it was so obviously noir, it's like, why are we even discussing this, right? I mean, out of the past, there's no discussion. Is noir or not? It's like, I'm not going to answer that. That's ridiculous. But we've just done other ideas. I think we all just kind of got a little, I don't want to say tired of it, but the other thing that happened, Brett, just to give you a little look behind the curtain here, is a lot of people didn't grasp what was happening in those things. And I'd talk about movies and they would assume that those movies were being shown that week on Noir Alley.
Yeah.
And they would say, I thought the movie this week was, La True or something. And it'd be like, no, that I'm just talking about these things in general. So that was part of the reason that we kind of stopped being as enthusiastic about it, because people on social media just didn't know how to take it. And people got tired of having to respond and say, no, we're not showing it. We're just talking about it. So that everybody's a little too quick on the trigger on social media to say, my calendar shows this. And it's like, well, get a head on your shoulders. Okay. You're reading the next one.
Okay, and this is from. Sorry, I'm in the dark here in case people don't realize that. Literally, it's on.
Okay, well now if you need more light now, Anne,
no, I'll
just put it
here. So this is from Maggie and Kurt. After watching for about 1,437th time, suddenly last summer, is this noir? It seems to hit all the house bases for compromised hero, femme fatale, and avaricious second fiddles.
Okay,
your biggest fans in Battleground, Indiana.
Battleground, Indiana, and they're referring to the actual place, I assume, of Battleground.
Yes, not their marriage.
Well, I was thinking of it since this is a election year. I was thinking of it in terms of it's a battleground state, but Battleground. Why do I know Battleground, Indiana? It's small. It's small. So when Maggie and Kurt say your biggest fans in Battleground, Indiana, I have no doubt that they are my biggest fans, because I'm going to bet you that Battleground, Indiana doesn't have 2,000 citizens. I would be surprised. And I know that it's famous because it's come on. I have someone in my family who's from Indiana, so I know a lot of Indiana stuff. But it's in Tippecanoe County in Indiana. Famous for the political campaign song "Tippecanoe and Tyler Too," which actually is largely responsible for what's his name, William Henry Harrison. I'm getting all my politics loused up. I know it was running against Martin Van Buren, and it was John Tyler and wasn't it William Henry Harrison, who somehow like was an Indian killer in like the Shawnee or something like that, were on the Tippecanoe River, and he like
Wow.
legendarily like massacred. Maybe I should stop talking about this before I get into trouble.
Getting dark, man.
Yeah, it's getting dark. Suddenly Last Summer, noir or not? I'm saying no, because it's like when people say that can't be noir, that's an Alfred Hitchcock movie. It's like, well, that can't be noir. That's a Tennessee Williams story, So hothouse melodrama is how I would define Suddenly Last Summer. Although there's a creep factor in the movie that is pretty extraordinary. I mean, I remember seeing that movie on television when I was young, and I would be lying if I didn't say that Liz Taylor in that white bathing suit certainly inspired some things.
Yeah.
It was like, holy cow. Because that's Liz Taylor when she was just so stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a whole creepy subtext going on there that a young person will not quite figure out. So you're just left with, wow, this is a weird movie, and the guy's chasing him down the beach and all that stuff. And then, of course, you later learn, oh, it's Tennessee Williams.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Of course, there's all sorts of strange sexual undertones and everything, but I'm going to say nix on Suddenly Last Summer being a film noir. I mean, part of me loves that everybody now sees things through a noir lens, but part of me is also like, well, we can't just suddenly retroactively consider everything to be a film noir. I mean, that's a melodrama. That's a hothouse melodrama.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I just want to put in a little plug for a YouTube channel that I really love called Myth. Oh God, not now. Hold on. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I hope not. My computer phone went off. Anyway, good. So it's called Movies Explained for MEF, and he's a Southern boy, and he just kind of goes through and gives these really hilarious summations of films. And he did one for Streetcar Named Desire. So if you ever really want just like a really fun thing to watch, MEF space Streetcar Named Desire, because I love the way he sort of talks about the story. It's very funny, while acknowledging like the kind of terrible things that happen in that too. That's all. Oh, and also he does one of Haas on Haunted Hill, which I must have watched 20 friggin' times.
Oh, okay,
it's so funny.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what somebody the other day, there was another Tennessee Williams play that somebody was putting the noir template over it, and I think it was Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore or something like that, and which Tab Hunter was in on Broadway with Tallulah Bankhead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was also funny. The other day, I forget, oh man, this just popped into my mind. Some young person was on television the other day. Oh, oddly, it was after a Giants game, and the broadcaster, Carlos Ramirez, I think it was, called up something as trivia and tried to pronounce Tallulah Bankhead's name and completely butchered it. And I said, this is these young people today, it's like it was like he called her Tulala or Talala Bankhead or something like that. And it's like, no, 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 come on, get it together. Anyway, okay, and our last one here, and you're going to have to explain to me um, who who this is from because I see two. Uh,
Ay, did you? It's Steve.
okay, it's from Steve. Steve
Yeah.
in Exeter, New Hampshire, has a movie fantasy proposal that I think could happen if the stars align. We'll see about
So to
that.
speak.
Love to know your thoughts and was wondering if you might have one or two of your own. First is In a Lonely Place, directed by Park Chan-wook. I'm really curious as to how he came up with that, or like why he thinks that's a thing. And second is The Maltese Falcon, directed by Werner Herzog.
No.
I I
Just
I,
so
I
no, no,
I'm wondering
no,
if he's
no.
submitting these just to freak us out, you know. Uh, Werner Herzog doing the Maltese
That
Falcon.
is
You have
glacial
seen Bad
pace.
Lieutenant, Port of New Orleans, right? I mean, uh, it's just funny. I like Herzog movies, but I don't like Herzog movies when he comes into my turf because he's just too crazy and wild and anyway,
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
yeah,
And Park Chan Wook for In a Lonely Place. But I have to tell you, Steve, there have been numerous attempts to do another version of In a Lonely Place. Virtually, I think every director in Hollywood who loves noir has considered like, why don't I do it the way the book was actually written
yeah.
as opposed to the Nick Ray version, because then they can't say I'm doing a remake. I'm doing the original, like the way Todd Haynes did Mildred Pierce instead
Hmm.
of the movie. It was the book, right? And
And it showed the problems with adapting that book as is.
precisely, it was not the best decision. Um, you know, there's something to be said for making something more authentic and realistic does not make it better.
Hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
Mildred Pierce is a bit of a hothouse melodrama, but it looks so noir. And the changes they made to it made it into a film noir, whereas the book was less so. All right, there's no murder
yeah.
in the novel, and
But they caught the
anyway,
most important part, which is her relationship with her daughter. I mean, that as long
absolutely,
as that's
and
in there,
they
it's you know,
absolutely, and they focused on that and made Vita like the antagonist in the best possible way, whereas the book just goes far too much into Vita's story,
yeah,
and it's just kind of whatever. That wasn't
yeah.
the question, but do you have any of these, Anne, that like a old noir film that you would like to see somebody take a crack at and um, I mean, a lot of filmmakers do it, but
Yeah,
they
I mean, I would love to see Ty West do a film noir. I think that that would be very interesting for him. I don't know which one, but I think that that could be very interesting to see him do something like that because I mean, his films are always really interesting because most of them he's taking like a very like specific film type and kind of doing his own story in it,
mhm.
right? And so it would be interesting to I mean, I'd like to see him do a film noir. And I mean, if somebody was going to redo In a Lonely Place, the film, I would say Wong Kar-wai would be someone that I think could really do something with it because he's really good at relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
So someone like that redoing it, I think can be very interesting. But I don't know if there's anything. It's really funny when they redid. Oh God, why am I blanking on the name of it? Uh, da 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 da. It was based on the novel. Tyrone Power was in the original movie.
Nightmare Alley.
Nightmare Alley. Like I always thought if they ever did Nightmare Alley, I really would have liked to see Zac Efron do the lead character in that because I think he'd be a really interesting choice. And I understand what I mean. He's not a huge star, so they went with Bradley Cooper. But I really would have liked to see Zac Efron
Yeah.
in that because he's one of those guys. I mean, I just have seen him in a couple things. I didn't really know him when he was like a kid, because he kind of started out in that. But he's like really charismatic. That guy has a lot of charisma,
Yeah.
and he's a good actor too.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I had forgotten momentarily about Nightmare Alley and
Yeah,
that Guillermo del Toro had done that, which seemed like a natural fit for him because of the
yeah,
carnival aspect and how,
yeah.
and in some ways, I think what people didn't like about the movie was it was too much of a Guillermo del Toro
Hmm.
movie when he got done with it.
Yeah,
Uh, I didn't necessarily share that feeling. I mean, I liked his version of the film, uh, but I love the original. Is like so tight and perfect. I'm trying to think of, but we've seen this, and it never really works out.
yeah,
It's not that they're remakes. Like Barbet Schroeder did Kiss of Death, did a remake of Kiss of
yeah.
Death, and oh my God, this is embarrassing because I know them. I've met them both, and I can't. The guys who made the Reckless Moment, uh, David Siegel and Jesus, that's embarrassing. I'm sorry. It was called The Deep End with
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton, and which was really good. I thought that was a really good remake. Uh, but a lot of times it's like they're not remaking a film. They're just saying I want to do a film noir, like
Yeah.
like Steven Soderbergh doing The Good German,
Yeah.
right, which was a period thing, and and I'm sure that is close to being the biggest bomb on his resume,
Yeah.
right? Considering the amount of money, I mean, he's done minimalist little small movies and everything, but that movie cost a lot of money and had big stars and totally tanked.
Yeah.
Which is always what kills the whole thing for the Black Dahlia. That was going to be directed by David Fincher,
Yeah.
and Fincher said he wanted to shoot it in black and white, and it was going to be 3 hours long. And Universal said, "Then you're not making the movie."
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And then you saw what happened,
Yeah.
right? And that was not a good film.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I mean, I think it's, yeah.
I don't really have. I hate to disappoint you, Steve, but I don't really have a lot of movies. Like if only somebody would remake whatever, I don't really. I always wonder, like, why haven't they done something that wasn't made that was great? That's a novel that is dying to be adapted. I mean, I've always been. I've mentioned this on this show before. There's a great book by Jonathan Latimer called Solomon's Vineyard that for years people said, "Oh, we got to make a movie out of this," but it was so perverse. The book is so dark and perverse is the right word.
Yeah.
That there was no way it could get made. It was written in like 1939 or 40. It couldn't get made, and
Yeah.
nobody's made it ever.
Yeah.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to do period films though. Like their success, I mean, they can be successful, but I think it has to almost be like a historical film, which is funny because I don't really like historical films. But I think it's kind of hard to have a hit with a period film.
Well, it's
I mean,
interesting.
if it's a
That's certainly
biopic, maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that was part of the problem with Del Toro's film was just that I think the only people, I don't know, you know what I mean? It was sort of like a period
I know exactly
film,
what you
and
mean.
I think that was part of why it didn't succeed.
I completely agree with you because Hollywood does not like to make period films, and if they're going to make a period film, it must have a historical basis, and they'll make those become prestige films
Yeah.
in Hollywood, and this brings me back to Babylon Berlin, which is the most expensive television show ever made
Yeah.
outside the United States. But I don't know what the most expensive television show ever made in the United States is, but I'd be curious to know. But they always advertise at Sky Television put up the money for Babylon Berlin, and it's everything that America would never do. Right. I mean, it's
Right.
just, there's no way. I mean, they did try it a little bit with, I guess, what was I'm really not in my A game today. The Philip Roth story that was adapted by David Simon, that was like his speculative fiction about what if the Nazis had actually come to
Oh,
power in the
yeah,
United
yeah,
States.
yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very similar to Babylon Berlin. It's like set in the same time period, and because that's what Babylon Berlin is all about. It's like, how did the Nazis eventually come to power, and it's showing all the internecine
Yeah.
politics that were roiling around in Germany that led to the Third Reich. And I don't know that America would make that film,
Yeah.
or a corollary set in the United States. I don't think that would get green lighted in this day and age.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, they did the Winds of War, which is which is an incredible miniseries, and it really goes through all these different aspects of how America became involved in the World War II and what that meant. And that is like, if you guys have not seen that, you need to friggin' see
No,
it. It was
it's a
amazing.
classic. It's an absolute
Yeah.
classic. And yeah, but that was, Jesus, what, 40 years ago?
I was in high school. Yeah.
Yeah, that was at least 40 years
It was
ago.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mitchum's in it, for God's sake.
Yeah. Hug.
Um, yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to be a downer on this question or anything. It's just like, I don't think you in order to get a film remade, you would kind of have to hide, like the way the Cohen brothers hid that
Right.
Miller's Crossing was the glass key. But then again, they do their own thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you could get something done by like hiding it, but I don't know that it would be a period film. Like if you were going to do In a Lonely Place, it wouldn't be set in the 1940s.
Yeah.
The remake, it'd be today.
Yeah.
And honestly, you see, if you shot it, this is what I've said to the people that I know that I've talked to, saying I'd love to do a new version of it. I said, but if you did the book, it's not distinctive from all the serial killer movies that are made anyway.
Yeah.
Because they would demand that it be updated, and then it's just a serial killer movie set in Los Angeles today. And it's like, do we actually need another one of those?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
there's still Woolrich stories,
still plenty of Woolrich stories,
and he's got so many great concepts, and I think his stories are really timeless. I mean, because we're still as screwed up as we ever were.
No, I totally agree. I'll bet you that we see a new Woolrich film in the next year or two. Somebody will pull something out and adapt it, not that I have inside information on that, but we'll see.
We'll see. It would make me extremely happy.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. The only other thing I have that's new that I saw last night, I watched American Fiction.
Yeah.
Have you seen American Fiction?
I've been wanting to see it. I love the premise. I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet. Is it as good as they think it's going to be?
It is good. It's extremely good. And it was so wonderful because it's like a 90-minute film. I think a little longer, and it's great. It's I think a very accurate, seems like a parody of the publishing business and the movie business, but it felt very, very accurate to me.
Yeah.
And it was really good, and it was wonderful to see Jeffrey Wright playing a normal guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the acting was great, and I have to say, I was blown away because Leslie Uggams, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Leslie Uggams.
She's in it?
She plays Jeffrey Wright's mother in the movie.
Oh my God.
You do. She looks so good. I was just like, oh my God. At first, like, she has 2 or 3 scenes in the movie, and I'm thinking, when does Leslie Uggams show up? And Kathleen says, that is Leslie Uggams. And I'm like, she really hasn't aged that much. She really looked great.
Yeah.
Anyway, and everybody in the film is terrific, and it's extremely well done. And it reminds me that I need to read some of Percival Everett's books because he's a very prolific writer. I think he teaches English at USC or something, and just a lot of the issues it brings up are really classic and very amusing and very heartfelt movie. There's a lot of really nice stuff in it. So anyway, that's it. I recommend it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing Maxine on Tuesday, so obviously that's kind of one of the big films for me this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I've been watching like some true crime stuff on Netflix, just
How
sort
do
of in
you
the
get away from it?
background.
How do you get away from it?
But you know something, I really have a problem with their documentaries. Because like I've seen a couple of their like vegan documentaries, and there's like some really faulty science, and a lot of the studies they are doing have been that they reference were done by Big Food, who wants people to eat fake meat because that's how they make their money. So that kind of turned me off. And then this one I watched was Bad Vegan. And it was like,
oh, yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah. And one of the things was, so this woman who is sort of the film that is centered around her. And she wrote this blog post saying this is like fictional because part of what happened in this relationship she was in that sort of caused all this chaos and stuff was he was sexually abusing her. And she said that was really hard to open up about. And then they never used it in the film, which painted her in a very different light. And that really just infuriated me. So I think with Netflix, I'm just not going to watch any other documentaries anymore because, like I said, I mean, definitely when I was watching the ones on veganism, there was some really faulty stuff, especially the one where they were doing the study. We said, oh, we're going to take twins and they're all going to have one twin eat vegan and one twin not eat vegan and put them on the same exercise. First of all, they weren't actually on the same exercise programs exactly. And second of all, like I think the first couple weeks they gave them their food, but then they had to do it on their own, and they didn't have them keep food diaries. Like you cannot do a scientific study about diet and the person isn't at least keeping a food diary. I mean, that's just crappy science. So you guys just,
Well, I have an issue with a lot of these documentaries now because they just follow a very specific template. They latch on to a sensational subject and then they just lay the template over it, and they're not original and they're not really that interesting. And I feel like I'm watching the same thing over and over again. So I tend to skip over those now. But what you're saying about the way this Bad Vegan thing was adapted, you'll get a kick out of American Fiction because that's kind of what it's about. It's about a writer who is co-opted, and it's like if you want to be successful, you have to conform to the stereotypical. This is what it means to be a Black writer.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of stuff in that movie that resonated with me, and I know resonated with some of my colleagues, and they're like, "Wow, yeah, sorry, can you write blacker?" I just have to share one little thing that cracked me up when I was watching the movie because it was preceded by an ad for the new Eddie Murphy picture on Netflix, right? Where it's a Beverly Hills Cop movie, and I know this guy. I'm going to be outing him now on this broadcast, but that's fine because there's nothing to apologize for. It's just funny. I knew this guy and worked in Hollywood. He still has a very successful career as a screenwriter. His name is David Sheffield, and David is Eddie Murray's go-to writer to black up his screenplays. and David is a guy from Mississippi. He's a white guy from Mississippi. And he excels at writing Black dialogue, that kind of Black dialogue. And Eddie Murphy is just like he doesn't. David has to like do a final pass on all Eddie Murphy scripts to make sure that Eddie Murphy sounds like Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
That's like right out of American fiction.
Yeah, I'm
But
really
it's real. And David makes a damn good living writing black.
someone has to, I guess.
Well, it's funny that it's a white guy.
It is. But he's from the South, and that's just, it has a very Mississippi has a huge black culture,
Well, it's
and
funny. I mean,
and also there's a lot of crossover. Like, I think people don't realize that too, that there's a lot of crossover between blacks and white culture when it's Southern, or people that come from
oh
that. Like, I think
God,
sometimes people see it as opposite things, but there was a great music documentary which I loved years ago, and it was about blues and country and the overlap, and
yeah.
that is like it which just sort of speaks to this as well, that they're
Two
talking about the
words.
yeah.
Elvis Presley. Actually, you don't even need the
Yeah.
two words. The one
You
will
just say
suffice.
Elvis.
That will suffice. But yeah, it's just interesting, and it's so funny because I just when I just said that, to me it was a funny story, but now I realize people aren't going to take this seriously, right? And like be outraged that there was a white guy writing Eddie Murphy's dialogue. It's like, come on. I mean, this stuff has been going on forever, and it's like you're whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking about it now.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well, but do tell people how they can get North City Magazine.
oh, the Noir City Magazine. All you have to do is sign up for our mailing list, and then once you do that, you make a donation, $20 or more, and those or mores are greatly appreciated. And you will get the digital version of the Noir City Magazine delivered to your inbox as a downloadable PDF. And that's how you do that. And then, of course, there's a print edition that follows shortly after the release of the new edition, which I'm happy to say we are in the process of putting the new issue to bed. And it's got some terrific stuff in it. The last issue was great. This one is totally different, and I'm just there's a lot of really cool stuff in it. So that should be like in a month or month and a half or something that'll be coming out. But if you can also get a print edition of the magazine on Amazon for like $15 or something. And as usual, I will say we don't really get much of that money. We get like $1 out of the 15. Amazon gets the rest of it. So if I'm not going to say don't buy the magazine, but please don't just buy the magazine. Make a donation to the foundation as well.
Yeah, and you're going to be in Portland. I think the Portland's a week after this broadcast.
Okay, I will be, yes, in Portland the 19th to the 21st. Very much looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.
And yeah, so you guys can go to the Hollywood Theater website for tickets or passes. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, if you can like, subscribe, share, that'd be great. Our friend Carlton always shares this when it goes up on YouTube, on Twitter, which I appreciate greatly. So thank you.
Thank you, Carlton.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's it for me.
Yeah.
I think we plugged everything.
We have plugged everything. I just went over the programming this morning for the festival coming up in October in Washington, D.C. Or
awesome.
More honestly, Silver Spring, Maryland, outside Washington, D.C. So all of this stuff is in order now. I think we just have, the Noir City, Philadelphia is the only one I have left to program for this year. And then we move on to 2025.
I know.
Who knows
first.
what's in store? Yeah, I got an idea what I want for Christmas. The Christmas movie. We'll see if I can find it.
Very, very awesome.
Okay, I would thank everyone. Thank everyone for tuning in and watching. It's always fun doing this, and I can't tell you, like I mentioned at the top, how much people enjoy us doing this. So it's great.
Yes, and thank you for the questions once again, and for people playing at home. Yes, we are in October questions, so we're moving right along as best we can.
Very good. We'll catch up one of these days.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, as you could tell, if there's ever a time like if you're not sure if your question got answered, I can always check. And if we haven't answered it, then I can put it back into the hopper, because I do lose some sometimes. I try and check my spam folder regularly, because I'll often go into spam now. So once I figured that out, then I go through my
Okay.
actual spam and make sure that things get put back into the right place. But like I said, if you guys have submitted a question and you don't think it was answered, I can check to see if it was answered. And if it hasn't been answered before, we can definitely put that. And I always try to prioritize those when I see them come in and get them done within 1 or 2 episodes of the resubmission, since they've already been waiting.
Beautiful. And I feel bad sometimes, like I see a question come up that I know we've answered previously, but I'm assuming it's been submitted by someone who never saw, who's a relative newcomer or something, and they didn't know. So we do our best. That's all I can say. We do our best.
Absolutely.
And thanks a million.
Thank
Stay
you.
cool. Stay cool.
I
And
will.
we will talk very soon.
Okay. See y'all later.
Bye.